Remember when they said Cyberpunk 2077 is not going to get any more updates? There's 0 people working on it. Well, look what just dropped. Patch 2.13. Starfield fanboys literally on self-deletion watch.
Earlier today, Cyberpunk 2077 got its patch 2.13 update. For me on GOG, this is about a 2.3GB download, but it was notably larger on Steam at 5GB in size. But it did require 59GB of working space to install. And due to what was changed with this update, it's not available on consoles, at least as of right now. At its core, this update is going to provide some new upscaler options, as well as update some of the existing upscalers in Cyberpunk. So even though...
Bro, so we're talking about good graphics turned into even better and better graphics. They need to stop, okay? They need to stop. Because the truth is, they're gonna do the next Cyberpunk game. What's it called? I always forget. Orion? Well, it was Unreal Engine 5, I think, not Unity. Yeah, I think it was Unreal 5. And Unreal 5 is... It's hard to say if it's gonna have the same graphics as... What is this engine called? Lumberyard? No, that was the Ubisoft shitty one, I think. But in any case, if it looks worse than the original Cyberpunk 2077, people are going to be slightly mad. I wonder how that's going to play out. Graphics is definitely not everything, but, well, Cyberpunk is a beautiful game, and that does add to it at the end of the day.
Though it is a relatively small and minor update, this is honestly a pretty big deal. For the vast majority of you watching right now, you're about to get a pretty big FPS boost in Cyberpunk 2077, totally for free. But as you can imagine, there are some consequences.
Everyone loves FPS.
On the modding side as a result of this update, and a bit later on in this update, we'll even talk about the future of Cyberpunk, as this may very well be the final update for this game. The biggest addition of patch 2.13...
But it was already the final update, and it was the final update, and now it's the final update. Can we get less final updates?
was AMD FSR3 support, and this is genuinely a big deal. I did a ton of benchmarking and running a bunch of tests, and right now, FSR3 is how I can get the best FPS in Cyberpunk 2077, at least for the most part. At its core, the big appeal of FSR3 is it comes with its own version of frame generation. You've probably heard of this. For a long time, NVIDIA had this with DLSS 3.0 or even 3.5, but of course, that has a giant asterisk.
You know what I absolutely hate in the graphics department of these games? For example, the reflection thing. Oh, you can see yourself in the puddle. Oh, you can see yourself in the window. Bro, that window has a light through it. Why am I even able to see myself through it? That's not how physics work, okay? And this puddle, it's moving. Why is it reflecting me perfectly? It's moving! Okay, a puddle can reflect things, obviously, but it needs to be incredibly still, and there's a lot of conditions that need to be met. A puddle is not gonna just randomly reflect at all times. And so I hate the graphic things about this, because they just I think we're pushing graphics to a certain degree in a direction that honestly makes no sense
next to it, because NVIDIA's frame generation is hardware locked to 4000 series GPUs. Conversely, AMD's frame generation has no restrictions. Any of you watching right now, as long as you're playing on PC, can use frame generation in Cyberpunk now, which means you'll get a giant performance gain. So right off the bat, if you were previously using AMD FSR 2.1, which does not have frame generation, and are now immediately switching to FSR 3.0, for me personally, I saw an instant 50 FPS improvement in Cyberpunk 2077.
And it's just, the moment he, by the way, swapped, let's look at this again. Look, the moment he swaps, it instantaneously feels smoother.
For me personally, I saw an instant 50 FPS
instantaneously, just so smoother
improvement in Cyberpunk 2077. I tested this using the built-in benchmarker, and even with every single setting maxed out, full path tracing on, and playing at 4K resolution, I was able to comfortably play Cyberpunk 2077 above 100 FPS at all times using FSR 3. I did run this test several times to confirm those results, but yeah, with FSR 3.0 on auto mode, I was consistently above 100 FPS, and this is a particularly interesting and even somewhat surprising result. I'm fortunate enough to be playing with a 4090, and one of the interesting observations was FSR 3.
Oh yeah, this is understandable. I'm playing with the dual-core GPU Extended Edition that has Nitro Boost. it's pretty good. But sometimes the cabinet lifting technology gate flood doesn't work properly. So it does have some hiccups there, but it's nothing a little bit of Fizz Breeze water coolant system additive does not solve. I fucking hate technobabble.
3, AMD's technology actually performed better than Nvidia's frame generation when it came to FPS on my 4090. In a straight up head-to-head using the auto preset, FSR3 scored the same 120 FPS average as I mentioned before, compared to a mere 112 FPS while using DLSS with frame generation. So of course that's not game-changing, 8 FPS isn't massive, but it's still a healthy FPS boost as a result of using FSR3. So now I won't bore you showing the same benchmark over and over again, but I actually went through and tested every single preset for both FSR as well as DLSS. On quality mode, things were about even, with just a 2 FPS boost for FSR3, and the same was largely true on the balanced preset, but in performance...
the 2 FPS is like when Starfield was like, boys, we did it, we updated the game, we made it better. And it's like, you just improved it by 1 FPS. You released the whole damn patch, so you can brag about making the game 1 FPS faster? Yo.
Performance mode, there was a clear lead with FSR getting 10 more FPS, although there was one unique option. DLSS does have ultra
10 more FPS is definitely good.
Performance mode where it's actually upscaling 3x. FSR doesn't have a similar mode, and with ultra performance, I could shoot up to 100 FPS in Cyberpunk 2077, being a full 30 FPS higher than FSR 3 performance. Although, as you could probably tell from some of this gameplay where I am using the ultra performance mode,
I'm not sure this is new gameplay. I'm pretty sure I have seen a Juicehead video where he's in the exact same location right here doing the exact same things. Or something very similar. I mean, damn. Anyway, let's go to visuals.
Unfortunately, it doesn't win the visual war, because something that becomes immediately obvious, and I'm sure many of you noticed this already, as you're playing with FSR3 frame generation, there are clear visual issues in Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah, you can see some strange clipping and shit.
And right now, and at least part of this is being blamed on CDPR/AMD. Just standing here and looking around, you can see all kinds of artifacting, particularly in some of the foliage around me.
Wait. I didn't pay attention here. I want to see this again. I guess it doesn't look good at the tree doesn't look good. What's artifacting, by the way?
Kinds of artifacting, particularly in some of the foliage around me. But this
I guess
will extend to some of the other objects in the world, and just overall, without even trying to pay super close attention to some of these issues, you'll notice them. It's kind of hard to avoid as you're playing naturally. Conversely, as I switch over to DLSS 3.5 frame generation, I am about 10 FPS lower, but I don't have any of those visual issues. I would say the image quality itself looks quite similar between each of these, but there's a lot of specific artifacting that pops up from FSR3 that is just completely gone when using DLSS. And sadly, this is really notable while you're playing in real time. Here I'm playing with FSR3 frame generation, and I could constantly notice these visual problems. Particularly in some of the further out areas, as you're seeing stuff loading in, it'll just look really blurry. As well as, of course, there's a ton of visual artifacting on all kinds of objects in the world. This is largely going to be thanks to how FSR3 upscaling works. It uses frame interpolation, and in general, you want to have above 60 FPS before you even consider using FSR3. But obviously, even with my 60 FPS base, I was still running into some problems with using this one. And even here, comparing it to DLSS with the ultra performance mode, while the overall image quality is definitely worse compared to FSR3, the lack of some of those visual artifacts almost makes ultra performance mode feel a bit better. Things...
Dude, what's happening with the... Watch the... Look here.
Performance mode feel a...
Yeah, what the fuck?
Bit better. Things look worse.
It's just evaporating
Across the board, but those individual things looking bad don't pop out as much.
Also, all the paper is just literally spinning it around in circles and just entering the shadow realm.
But But of course, this is only really relevant for those of you who have a choice. For most of
That's so strange.
you watching right now,
Looks cool, but it's definitely strange.
oh yeah, FSR 3 isn't perfect, an extra 50 FPS is pretty substantial, and I could definitely put up with some visual artifacts for 50 extra FPS. FSR 3 will still be a massive upgrade in your experience. Although, it is quite a bit disappointing that we aren't getting FSR 3.1. That's the latest version of this technology that's already several months old, and it would actually resolve several of the visual issues.
Interesting. I guess this one... No, wait. The FSR 3.1 is lower FPS than the...
You're seeing in the background, as well as just generally is a bit more
Interesting.
versatile, being able to use several different frame generation techs. So
Well, to be fair, you know, if the difference is 1 frame in clipping, I would choose no clipping and -1 frame.
while I am happy we got something, it is a bit disappointing we didn't get the latest and greatest. Cyberpunk 2077 is definitely one of those games that benefits from having the latest and greatest. But that isn't the only thing that was changed with this update. Intel's XeSS was also updated to version 1.3, and
Probably not a lot of people want to hear about Intel. Oof, oof, oof.
this too is a pretty big upgrade. I went from getting 65 FPS to just under 80 while using
Let me check how bad Intel stock is doing. Last time I checked, it was -40% or something like that. It's pretty disgusting. Second. I am still, by the way, a still proud owner of exactly, wait for it, where is Intel? Of 0.17 Intel stocks, by the way. Made some good money on that because I sold before the crash and whatnot. But, you know, still. Man, let's see, 1 month. How poorly Intel is doing. Yeah, there was the spike, there was the 20 average, and then wait, that's 1 month? No way, brother. Yeah, this is the one. It was at 40, then it went down to like 30, then people started buying the dip. It went to 34, and then the collapse. The collapse from that 40 point, initially when all of the shit started, 50% down. That's insane. I thought it's gonna go down like 40% and it's time to buy back in. But man, 50%. But that I'm not even sure if I'm buying back in at the moment because, well, if one there can be 1 collapse and there can be 3 collapses. Let's see how many there are.
Intel's upscaler. This is still much lower than FSR, so I think most of you will still use FSR or DLSS, but if you're not using frame generation, it might be worth considering XeSS over FSR 2.1. CDPR also added the ability to use NVIDIA's DLLA with DLSS ray reconstruction, so you can get further image sharpening with anti-aliasing, while also getting at least some of the FPS boost from ray reconstruction if you're using ray tracing. But naturally,
This one's bad. Did you notice? For me, it was hard to not notice. Look.
while also getting at least some
This guy right here. Look at him.
of the FPS boost
Yeah, that's horrible. First on the shoulder, then on the front and the face.
from ray reconstruction if you're using ray
Oof.
tracing. But naturally, this will absolutely tank your FPS because you are disabling the typical upscaler while using DLAA. Beyond that, they also moved around some of these settings into this new Utilities tab. But of course, outside of FSR 3, the biggest impact from this update will be mods breaking. And this time around, this could end up being a bit of a larger issue than typical. It'll largely just be those core dependency mods requiring updates after this one, but some other mods will be broken, and some of these may take a bit longer to update if they get updated at all. The Cyberpunk 2077 modding scene has significantly quieted down over the course of 2024. Things are just a bit less active. So this update kind of coming out of the blue for the most part. I was actually going to make a short warning people, but CDPR was too quick with updating the game. But some mod authors may just not be as active with Cyberpunk anymore, and as such, some mods may take quite a bit longer to update now. This very likely will be the final update for Cyberpunk 2077. FSR 3 was the last promised feature that many of us were waiting for, and as we could see from CDPR's most recent earnings call, nobody is working on Cyberpunk 2077 right now. Efforts have fully
Yeah, but I didn't even think that we were gonna get this much. It's kind of strange.
moved on to the next Witcher game with Polaris, with work on the Cyberpunk sequel Orion starting to seriously ramp up. And some fans are
Yeah, the sequel is gonna be interesting.
are justifiably upset about this. Cyberpunk 2077 does have some lingering and unfixed bugs. There's an issue right now where clothing can get taken over by these black splotches, which can be really annoying, and of course for photographers it is a big issue. On consoles, many have been experiencing large visual issues ever since FSR 2.1 was added.
Oh god.
Several years ago. This is just...
And again, by the way, I hate, and it's a problem with the lighting. Again, this is just pushing the graphics way too high for something that makes way too little sense, in my opinion. For example, people were talking about, oh, look at the lighting, the new lighting, everything's so lit up and things. Like, I hated it, for example, personally. I think it's absolute bull, okay? You're making the whole goddamn street visible from your car lights? I'm sorry.
It's been a lingering and persistent issue that will likely never be resolved. There's some hope that FSR 3 could come to consoles. Some games have been getting that, but considering how late it came to PC, it does kind of feel like a pipe dream for this one to come to consoles at this point.
They completely abandoned consoles effectively, which is good.
Again, most of CDPR has moved on to other projects by now, although there's definitely hope for something to happen. Earlier this year,
I don't know about that, Chief, because CDPR Red is now CDPR Woke.
CDPR added official mod tools to The Witcher 3 with the release of Redkit. This is a big deal. This is just like what Bethesda has done for their games, and now you can create far more in-depth and custom mods for The Witcher 3. Many fans have hoped that this would come to Cyberpunk 2077, which already has a far more active and popular modding scene compared to The Witcher. Unfortunately, it wouldn't be as simple as just porting over these mod tools, as Cyberpunk 2077's engine has had further upgrades, but this was asked about during a recent earnings call, and I think CDPR had a pretty interesting answer about all of this.
When it comes to any future things, Cyberpunk, anything related, I mean...
Bro literally is walking on stilts.
Once we have something on our hands, we will definitely talk about that, but in general...
No, wait, that's a woman. I saw no bulge when she fell.
I would indicate that community...
Oh, look at that. Female police officers doing their duty in the modern age. Enemy runs up to you, don't shoot. Enemy steals your car, still kind of don't shoot. This one's shooting, but I think that could be a man.
Created content by means of mods, enabled, empowered by really well-prepared tools is something we are fond of. And we do see value in that, in how we interact with the fans.
So of course, they're not actually confirming anything one way or another there, but the part that gets me hopeful is they also aren't saying no, but instead they're highlighting how they do clearly see the value of mods with their game. So I have to wonder if
mods would be pretty cool, but you know, we're gonna have to see what happens there. In any case, choose head, 10 out of 10, bye!